and ways to kind of help you so that it's not just this essay, but it's kind of a broader way of getting the gist of something.
Yeah. Well, both of them pretty useful for me right now. But right now I'm still kind of want to focus on the grammar issue because this essay is due today.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have that much time to change it by myself.
So what does that say about? Or you said English 125, but
yeah, it's kind of like your own empathy exam. To write something you have encountered with like years ago, like maybe a job or internship. Then start from that point to write an argumentative essay to talk about something you are interested in. Then I don't know, take a position to argue for it. That's the purpose of this essay.
Okay, so it has to be argumentative.
Yeah.
All right. And then how long is it?
It's 5 to 7 pages, and I write about, I don't know, I think 5 pages.
Okay.
Yeah, 5 pages.
So normally we also have the writer read their paper aloud. It can be a nice strategy to catch little grammar issues if you feel comfortable. But if you don't, I can read it aloud, or we can read it silently. It's really whatever you feel comfortable with.
No, I can read it aloud.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. Are we doing like paragraph by paragraph or the whole article
So
at once?
normally I would suggest doing it like the whole thing, but since you said you're kind of on a time limit and you want grammar, we can go paragraph by paragraph if you want. That's up to you again, whatever you feel like is best.
Well, I don't know. I would prefer paragraph by paragraph because I don't know, maybe when I reach the end of this essay, I might forget what I have encountered with before.
All right, sounds good.
Okay.
And then, do you mind if I take notes if I need to?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I think I might have. So I didn't bring a copy of my essay.
Oh, that's okay. That's fine.
So, sympathy in animal experiments. My major is to be biopharmacy. During the last few years, I have been conducting several animal experiments. After doing humanitarian execution towards dozens of animals, I'm no longer the person I used to be. I feel the fragile of life and witness the greater contribution by animals. Many animals protectivism argue we should stop the animal experiments. However, I think this is wrong, and we need those to guarantee the development of science. In 2013, I studied in Tongji Pharmacy School in Huazhong University of Science and Technology in China. I was assigned to help doing research work. Together, there were 25 students. Before starting the internship, we have to attend daily courses to prepare for the following experiments.
Okay. So I think that's good. That's a good introduction, and grammar-wise, I didn't see too many things, but for like during the last few years, I have been conducted. So you don't need the been since you just have I have conducted. Exactly. Several animal experiments after doing humanitarian execution. So that means like you euthanize them, like you put them down, you kill them. Is that what you mean?
I didn't get it. What do you mean by?
Like when you say humanitarian execution, you mean that you killed them?
Yeah, I killed them by myself.
Okay, so there's a word called, do you know the word euthanize or euthanasia?
I know that.
Okay. Because I feel like humanitarian execution.
It's too big.
It sounds a little awkward.
Awkward.
You know, execution sounds pretty harsh, and I know you put the humanitarian to kind of counteract it, but I think just saying after euthanizing dozens of animals.
Okay. How to spell it? Euthanizing.
I think it's that.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. After euthanizing dozens of animals, I'm no longer the person I used to be. I felt the fragile of life. So fragile is an adjective, but you want to say like fragility. You want the noun of that. So I felt the fragility of life and witnessed the great contribution by animals. So you're saying that animals contribute to life, and in what ways do they contribute?
in the way they help the experiment progress, or in the way like they give us a result about something we're curious, which cannot easily be done on human. So,
Okay, so you could say I felt the fragility of life and witnessed. You could say, because I want to expand a little bit more this idea of how they contribute to science. So maybe like I felt the fragility of life and witnessed how much animals contribute to science, and then have a sentence that say without how much they contribute to science, and then you could have the sentence that say many animal, and then again you'd want to change that to protectionist, like that'd be the noun of that. Just STS instead of the M. Yeah. Animal protectionists argue we should stop animal experiments.
I witnessed how much
It's hard because like a visitor plays like a lot of different roles, and I realize
Many animal protectors argue we should stop. I think you could say we should stop just animal experience. Like the animal experience kind of having
Specific.
the there makes it specific. Like
Okay.
you're talking about you in particular, but you're just saying in general. So I think you can get rid of the and then say we should stop. I think you need like a because there. Why do people think we should stop experiments on it?
because it's brutal, and because it's brutal, it's killing animals, killing creatures.
Okay, so then you could say something like because of the brutality or cruelty, something like that.
Okay.
So yeah, I can see that literally like someone will say like I got a headache and they're able to get advice on the spot.
And then, however, I think this is wrong, and we need. I would suggest maybe saying we need and replacing those of we need. Maybe like we need to continue animal experiments in order to guarantee the development of science.
also like the wording is kind of it's difficult to like Google what value means. It's like something that is held to
We guarantee. And then I think that this part here, when you start talking about your experience, I think that would fit better in its own paragraph, since this is kind of the argument you're making, and that's kind of like your thesis. And after we read the rest of your paper, I might see some other things that you talk about, which we could add to the thesis.
Okay.
But for right now, I think that
start
would be
with
the
another
end.
paragraph.
Yeah.
Which is really powerful.
And then, like, I was assigned to help do research work, because doing is like,
Okay. To help do.
yeah. Together, there were 25 students. Our first during the internship, we had to attend daily courses to prepare for the following experiments.
in general, what I said kind of works, right?
Okay.
Just
Alright, so then you want to read, start again and start reading.
Sure. The first day courses was to study the absorption behavior of drug by lung. We will have to separate the lung from live guinea pig as a study model. There were 5 very cute guinea pigs in the cage. Everyone was pretty excited with our first class, especially for the girls. They really liked those cute little creatures, and they were talking about helping them escape from the cage. As for me, I was more curious about the experiment procedures. After 5 minutes waiting, the instructor came in with 5 sets of surgery kit. The brief instruction did struck us. We have to knock their heads with a hammer until they pass out. Then we will need to cut their chest open, then take the entire lung out of it and poke the bottom of the lung with a big needle. I was the first one to start. It was struggling in my left hand and I held the hammer in my right hand. I do not remember how many strikes it took to knock it out, but I do remember it kept moaning and sweating because of fear of pain. Finally, it passed out. I took a quick peek at the cage. The rest animals were shaking and I believe I saw fear in their eyes. The following procedures were pretty easy and less stressful. As I tied it on a board, I cut it open with a surgery knife and scissors. The blood was all over my hand and I saw girls were wondering and boys had begun this heartbreaking experiment.
Okay.
It did
That's pretty intense. Who's the audience for your essay? Like who's gonna be reading it?
My professor?
Just your professor?
Just my professor,
okay.
yeah.
Right.
Okay.
It did feel intense.
Yeah, it did. Like I'm just kind of it's a little bit kind of difficult to read, but I understand that that's kind of like what you need to talk about.
Yeah.
Living in the suburbs of Los Angeles, I gained exposure to many aspects
But
of my
it seems like this paragraph is kind of working towards the opposite of what you're arguing, because like
kind of like working to the counter argument,
Okay.
why do we need this kind of brutal experiment? Why not people stop it? Then in this next paragraph, I kind of like to answer it. Why do we really need it? And why students need to do this certain experiment? And then talk a little bit about why do we have the kind of like the priority to say that we can do this kind of experiment towards them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're going for that strategy.
Yeah, I'm going for that. So it's kind of like this kind of like a introduction to the I don't know, to the experiment, to what people might feel at the first time of the animal experiment.
Okay.
It's kind of like it's compared with all the experiments I've been to. I picked this one because it's in the middle. I picked Junior Pig because it's cute, and I picked the experiment because it's not too brutal for everyone to read, but it did send over something. I feel like I did talk another experiment in the following part about mice and rat. It's kind of like revealed other part because at least when I feel with rats and rat, I didn't feel that much sympathy. When I feel rabbit and Junior pigs, I kind of sometimes worry about myself. They might bite me. That's kind of. Then I talk about this different feeling. Then I say stuff like, well, why do we feel to have different feeling towards different animals? Is that moral? Is that people will say like, we should not do experimental procedures on dogs because dogs are our friends. But does that mean that we can do experiment on those who are not our friends, like rats or mice? Because rats is always scary, and we always try to kill them when we find it in our home, right? We try to find pills, stuff like that. And ideally, I talk with my friends who has underwent all the procedure with me, underwent all the events with me. They kind of like have the same feeling with me, like, with the rabbits, we tend to be like care for them, we don't want to hurt them. But for rats and mice, we kind of care for ourselves somehow. Yeah.
So that's why you chose the guinea pig.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
What is talking is more like.
So yeah, then that was just my reaction of reading it, but I can understand that that's kind of what you're going for, and like as long as you know that your professor, I don't know about your professor, but what reaction he or she will have, but that's just something to think about.
Right, so I kind of say that, like, at the very end.
So, by love, the absorption behavior of drugs by, I might put the article there, or by, wait, hang on. The first day course was to study the absorption behavior of drugs by the lungs.
By
By the lungs. Yeah, I might put
Okay.
say the and make it both of them. We, and then when you say would have, so we would have to do something sounds like you haven't done it yet. So
Okay.
if you're talking about the past.
So what if I'm in the past, but that's timeline a little bit before that past?
Yeah, so I
Kind of want to do the introduction of that's the first day. We know that we will have to separate the long. Or do I just
Okay.
write we had to?
like it's not that I like was constantly different, it's that I
Well, you learn, or even like,
I get what you're saying. So you're trying to say like the first course like was to do this. Like
Yeah.
that's how you're trying to say it. Okay. So the first course was to study.
because I think that shows like that you can compromise in a lot. Also, so giving that like the two methods.
yeah.
So then if you want to leave that, I would maybe suggest saying we were told we would have to separate the lungs from live guinea pigs as a study model.
Leslie Michigan is financing.
And then like lung, so when I think of lung, I would think that's like one, but a pair of lungs would be plural. So I would keep that plural. Separate the lungs from live, and then guinea pigs, I would make that plural too since it's more than one. There were 5 very cute guinea pigs in the cave. Everyone was pretty excited.
Over years, but
Pretty excited maybe about our first class. Especially for the girls, they really like those cute little creatures. And they were talking about helping them escape the cave. As for me, I was more curious about the experiment procedures. After, so you could say, so you have like the 5-minute hyphenated. So that's kind of putting it as like a, I'm trying to figure out how to explain this. When it's hyphenated, it's almost like a one thing, like a thing of waiting. So you could say like after 5 space minutes of waiting, or you could say after a 5-minute wait, and that could be hyphenated.
Okay.
Because it's like,
okay, yeah.
I would do
Where I would
one
I really could
wait.
take out this one.
but then you would want to say a 5-minute,
yeah.
and then keep wait separate.
Keep weight separate.
Oh, and I still have
Because like 5 minutes is like the whole time grouped
time.
together, and then wait is separate. After a 5-minute wait, the instructor came in with 5 sets of
and then go on to here,
5 sets
and then
of surgery, and then since it's 5 sets, then
Kids.
exactly.
yeah.
The brief instruction did shock us. We had to knock their heads with a hammer until they passed out.
This whole thing
Then we would need to cut. So then, since you're talking about the guinea pig's chest, I would make that. I would say cut their chest open,
Okay.
and maybe their chests open. Because you want to make it consistent. So you said like their heads, so then their chests.
All of them.
Take the entire lung. And poke the bottom of the lung. Exactly, with a big needle.
Yeah, I should.
I was the
have already
first one to
said
start.
much that up here, so it'll just be like a.
And then it is a little ambiguous there since you haven't mentioned the guinea pig for a couple sentences.
I don't know. They were struggling.
I would, since it was just one, you're only holding one.
Yeah, I only
right?
had
so
one, yeah.
maybe just like the guinea pig was struggling.
So, what do you want to do? So.
And then I hold. So that's present tense.
Which they don't have a lot of research resources, but they seem like inspiring to be a research university.
And then you just it took to knock it out.
What? Let's try.
Because knocked, like,
Yeah.
Since you already said took, like took two, knocked it out. Okay. But I do remember it kept moaning and sweating because of fear. Finally, it passed out. I took a peek at the cage. And I played some
I guess in my private mail, I only just like listed everything that I did and not necessarily like the teamwork aspect of it.
So, like one thing about yourself, it could be anything, and it could be really interesting.
When you say like girls were wondering, what do you mean by that?
They were kind of like, they want to stay away from this experiment.
Okay.
Kind of like they feel like it was too brutal for them right now, and they just want to leave the room and create
It's like they weren't doing it. Like they were hesitant to do it while the
Yeah, they were
guys were doing it.
yeah,
they
the guys.
started, but the girls didn't. Okay.
Yeah.
So then, instead of wondering, because wondering sounds like
Good.
thinking. So maybe we can think of a better word.
Back, with what you've done. So there's only so many.
So you could say like I saw
You know what I mean?
I saw that the girls were hesitant while the boys had begun this heartbreaking experiment.
This will hesitant.
Hesitant.
And what?
I have no idea.
And the boys had begun this heartbreaking experiment.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
That's
There
fine.
isn't like one thing that is.
Okay, can I just speed up? Okay. This first experiment was really striking. Their lives vanished because of us. This is the first time I saw the weakness of life, even so this was not the first animal died because of me. We feel much more sympathy towards animals that we underwent the process of killing. It shows the weakness of life in a much more clear way. The brutal made us feel terrible, especially when we start to thinking what will happen when we use the same procedures towards ourselves. We also tend to consider experiment animals as a part of our environment, while we're thinking the meat we ate just happened to be there. It is the instinct of respect of life that makes us feel sympathy. I wonder who gives us the priority to promote their lives and what was the meaning of the brutal experiment, since everyone knew the outcome of this experiment and why we had to knock it out instead of killing it in the first place.
Okay. So I think this is a good paragraph, kind of working into your argument. So let's see. This first experiment was really striking. Their lives vanished because of us. So I think that you might, because like there and us sound like it could be mistaken for the same group. You know, I know you're talking about like you as people, and then there is the guinea pigs' lives. So maybe like the guinea pigs' lives vanished because of us.
Everyone I've seen like on like student forums have been like, I don't want this anymore.
I mean, it could go to research hub. I just would be worried that you don't want to
Right, like
dragging.
And then since
yeah.
it's
So,
all past tense, you would want to
the way that I
say
wrote it
change that to past tense.
I want to continue.
This was the first time I saw the weakness of life, even though this was not the first time.
I've seen.
This is not the first animal
It's like people.
that died
That's like
because
pretty
of
much all I
me.
say. Like I never find it personally. I just like put it on the podcast, and then I literally just feel like I want.
And then what do you mean? We feel much more sympathy towards the animals that we underwent the process of killing. What do you mean by that?
I mean, kind of like we do eat meat, right? At least not all of us are vegetarian. So those animals like goat, like cow or beef, they died because of us, but we didn't feel guilty or sympathy that much. We're just thinking, yeah, they will just provide us as usual, as what it should be.
Because we didn't kill those animals?
Because we didn't kill those
We
animals.
didn't have to watch it happen?
Yeah, we didn't watch it happen,
Okay.
but for this experiment, we did underwent all the process.
I always like to
Kind of like more, I don't know, kind of like more directed to us. Like the meat, we can say like, I don't know, it grows on the tree. We can even think of it did, but this was actually happening right before us. So,
Okay. So then, I think you can make that a little bit clearer. We feel much more sympathy towards the animals that you could say something like that we take part in killing.
Take part in killing. Okay.
Yeah.
Took part in killing or take part? Take
You
part.
could, yeah.
I was definitely emphasizing more like helping people out.
Shows the weakness of life in a much more clear way. The brutal. So then again, I would change that to noun. Brutality made us feel terrible, especially when I started.
I really, really like it. So,
To think.
yeah, I think I'll definitely go. So, you think the research
Started to think what would happen when we use the same procedure towards myself.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I can do that.
So by that you mean like if you, when you started thinking like, well, what if this happened to me?
Yeah, I was thinking. I mean, I feel like the way I feel like guilty or bad for the guinea pig is because I know if that happens to me, I would be suffering a lot. I would rather die instead of suffering all of things. So I mean, by this sentence, we feel sympathy mostly because we were thinking what might happen to us if we underwent everything like they did.
Okay. So then I think maybe saying something like, what would happen if the same procedure happened to us? I think that's a little clearer.
So maybe that's what they're going for. Like, do you volunteer there or something like that? Like, how would you act?
Yeah. So,
And then just if the same procedure.
Because they give you 250 words.
yeah.
You also
I
have to
just like wish they
consider
would specify.
It's like a very weird.
They are
experiment
weird.
animals as a part of our environment.
Yeah, so if I were you, I would talk about like
Just kind of like, I don't know, maybe
something like.
Yeah, so
retelling what I want to sing right over here.
I just say,
I don't know.
I moved there at this point in my life.
What do you mean?
I mean, maybe
There.
I don't need this sentence here.
I mean, I don't do anything there now.
Kind of like weird. I don't know why I write it.
When I was still there.
Okay.
When I come back, I still enjoy.
First thing I can do
You only do stuff and those things that are very broad.
It is the instinct of respect of life that makes us feel sympathy. I wondered who gives us the priority to demand their lives and what was the meaning of this brutal experiment since everyone knew the outcomes of the experiment.
Like, oh, like I've actually come there. Like people encourage me to go there.
Like, they must get a wide variety of answers to this question because it's just like very.
Gives us maybe like the power instead of priority, the power to, and then instead of command, the power to maybe end their lives, the power to take their
And
lives.
then after I graduated from high school, I moved to Washington County to
Who gives us the power to end their lives and
because they already know everything I do here.
so since like this is present here but past here, I kind of like the past tense, so I wondered
Who gave?
who gave us the power to end their lives and what was the meaning of this brutal experiment since everyone knew the outcome. And then I think you can get rid of this experiment since you already said experiment. Since everybody knew the outcome and why, maybe why did we have to knock it out instead of killing it? In the first place.
So, do you graduate
I just graduated.
And then just knock. Why did we have to knock it out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, kind of like next paragraph, I was just trying to answer the first three questions in the previous paragraph. To start with, most medical research and studies such as new drug research depends on the feedback of body. However, most intended compounds turns out to be useless or undesired strong side effect. There are 4 levels of clinical experiments set by FDA to gather enough information about toxicology and pharmacology before a drug could go to a market. The first 2 levels of clinical experiment usually ends at scanning the potential drugs. There will be hundreds of bioactive compounds tested in the first place of new drug. Afterwards, there will be about 20 to 30 compounds left and go into the second stage of clinical trial. Usually, there will be about 2 to 3 compounds left after this. Thus, this extremely low ratio is impossible for a company to guarantee the life security of experiment on humans before this kind of screening. However, a process needs to be made. In order to get the result in a much safer and efficient way, companies use animals to mimic human first. Even though the outcome of animal experiment cannot fully explain and anticipate how human body will behave, they can still provide a broad view of the mechanism and a large space for scientists to operate such as transgenic animals. And the uncertainty in drug could be resolved by the following clinical trials in a much safer way. In every aspect of bioresearch, experimental animals play one of the most important necessary roles for scientists to make progress.
Okay. So I think what this paragraph needs most is a topic sentence that relates it back to your argument. Like why animal experiments are necessary. Because you went from, you kind of switched gears from going from like explaining your experience to this of the why, you know, this like bigger, more research based.
So kind of.
So
how do I start? How to start? Why? Do I need a topic sentence in this paragraph?
Yeah. So I would think you could say something like animal experiments are necessary because
I will also volunteer as yeah, no, I'm
Okay. I don't know.
are necessary. I'm trying to think of something like because of like the limitations of science, or because of something like because of the unknown of new drugs, you know, something like that.
Because of the lack of information of drugs.
Because new drugs lack certainty, or because new drugs.
I like that.
okay.
Yeah, I will say because of new drugs.
Right.
Or I can say because bioresearch like certainty.
Sure.
It is. It's just like little things you know what isn't like.
That was a medical research.
Yeah, so after you've read all of that, the next one is
Lacks certainty.
Like certainty.
So it says
And then since research is like one collective, you want that to be exactly. And then so I think that's better, because then it kind of leads your reader into what this paragraph is going to be about. Most medical research and studies, such as new drug research, depends on the feedback of the body.
Expand on here.
However,
You said you're going to club softball, but you didn't talk about it at all. That would be like really topic.
what are intended compounds?
Like
Is that an actual like term? Intend compounds? Is that something?
I don't know what's the actual term, but my point is that in the drug research there might be 2,000 compounds that show some bioactivity somehow, maybe strong, maybe low, but we don't know. Kind of like we know maybe one of the 2,000 compounds they will work and they could finally become a drug. But when we start with these 2,000 compounds, we cannot give it to test on human directly because they might they have strong side effects or they might be totally useless. In the case of very strong side effect, you may directly kill somebody. So in order to scan this in the first place, we use animal experiment to mimic human body, even though they cannot fully describe how human will behave, how human will react to those drugs. But it's kind of like, this uncertainty could be resolved by the following 2 clinical trials to test on human body. But I don't like this 3 sentence. I trying to want to delete it, but I don't know how. I mean, start from here. I mean, I want to say that the first 2 parts was just scanning, but the result is very low. It's a very low ratio scanning who can pass, who cannot.
Let's see.
Like before, I just because it was very specific to the essay of like what challenge did you face.
Yeah, and definitely like rework it. So we're talking about like
So this person was like,
You want to get rid of those sentences you said?
I don't know, I kind of like wanted to summary it, like
this is just like
the experiments are very low ratio because I think I'm saying too much about this low ratio situation.
So you could, if you want to do that, you could maybe say something just like,
that would have been a lot easier. I could just be like,
because I think that this is kind of necessary. We're talking about there's 4 levels of clinical experiments.
So okay, now
then
I can leave it.
I was gonna try and listen
maybe
to this,
even
but
saying
not
something
like
like the first 2 levels,
leadership, volunteering, tutoring, all of
or even just saying something like all of these 4 levels are necessary because there are so many compounds that need to be need to be removed, or what are they being like
Kind of like didn't pass the exam.
okay, so need to be like ruled out almost, something like
ruled
that.
out.
Okay, so just kind of summarizing those sentences by saying that these levels, the drug needs to go through so many levels in order to get the compounds to a low number, or something like that. To where, is that kind of how you could summarize that? Or?
I can say those 2 experiments, those 2 first level experiments are necessary because it can rule out undesired compounds. It rule out.
Undesired? Yeah, sure.
I would say the first 2 I can say it should say scanning. Or I say can I leave this sentence and I say, but the ratio of compounds are pretty low to pass the exam, to pass this 2 experiment.
Yeah. I don't know if is it the ratio by that point, or is it just the number of compounds that pass, the number is low?
Okay.
I mean, the number of
Yeah, the
compounds
numbers.
is low? Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, I would go there, but
yeah. But like
it's not as
match for you.
right. It's not as much as my like number 1 visit was. Like at first I'm like, oh, I want to do things, but
Yeah. It's all about like what's best for you, to be honest.
yeah.
Like, I don't know. There's a lot of like emphasis put on like, oh, like it's like a really big school.
Yeah.
But I really think that like,
Where would you go?
You can write
I feel like CMU, it's not like obvious.
here like
Anything, it wouldn't be as much pressure either.
can do this.
Okay. So I would say like the number of compounds that pass, maybe that pass these levels of the experiment are very low.
That.
Pass these two levels since it's plural.
You know so much about
This.
These, these two levels of the experiment. And then this extremely, since you're, yeah, it's an adverb that you need. Yeah, I think that definitely makes sense. So we have just a few minutes left. I don't know if I can get you some handouts for like grammar things too. That might help you. But is there anything like kind of general that you want to talk about before?
Let me say.
Because I think from what we've read, you have a really good grasp of, where you're going. And I think from what you've told me and you've been able to kind of explain on your own, so I think it's going in a nice direction for sure.
Okay, I mean, kind of I want to know, in the writing essay, kind of like homework assignment, so for each topic, I think you have a topic sentence. Does it to be like in a, I don't know, in a formal way to write it, or I mean, it has to be the first sentence, or can I put it somewhere else?
So all I would say for topic sentences are, you just want to make sure it's more about transitions. Like, so at the beginning you were talking about the experiment you did, but then you were transitioning to more of like the argument part of why they're necessary. So you kind of needed to connect the two. So it's just about like using like but then in that transition you're gonna have the topic sentence that kind of explains what the paragraph is about. So like each paragraph should have its own idea, and as long as you're kind of saying, like for example, you could say, aside from clinical trials, animal experiments are necessary because this, and that is the topic as well as a transition because it's moving through the ideas. But it's not like it has any set formula kind of. It's just about making sure that you're setting your reader up for what the paragraph's going to be about.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's pretty good today. I
think so. And I mean, from like your grammar was really, really good. You just had like a couple issues here and there, but that's totally understandable. So I think that you shouldn't be too worried about it because it was definitely, I was able to understand it. So it was really good. And I'm going to grab a few handouts for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Borrow a pen? Can I borrow it?
Oh yeah, of course. So this one has some information about introductions and conclusions. This is about articles, like thes and as. I got two of those. And this just has some like normal errors that people make, like sentence fragments and things, but I didn't really see a whole lot of that, but just maybe if you have a question, this might be able to help you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And also feel free to make more appointments, come back. I know it's your first time, so if this was helpful and you can make bunch of appointments. We're open until the 16th of August, and then we're back 5-6 days a week when
Okay.
school starts, and classes start again.